Hey guys, Andrew Dobie here, and welcome to Just a Chat With. In our previous episode, we sat down with Ashwin Chacko, who is a multidisciplinary illustrator, designer, hand letterer, and motivational speaker, living and working out of Dublin, Ireland. Working 12 years now as a solo entrepreneur, Ashwin has worked with clients such as Facebook, Adobe, Nike, Puma, United Nations, and many more. Ashwin specializes in very positive visual storytelling, helping businesses to connect with their audiences through illustration and design for advertising campaigns, products, packaging, editorials, and even children's books all over the world. We had an amazing time with Ashwin, so go check that out if you haven't already. Before now, we've had people on the podcast such as Pixar's Noah Klokek, branding author, lecturer, and Design Matters podcast host, Debbie Millman, special effects supervisor, Kevin Pike, and loads more. And we also have loads more on the way. In this episode, I sat down with the wonderful Ica Headlam, who is a creative based here in the north east of Scotland. I nearly said west. He spoke to us from his home and squeezes into his very busy schedule. It was a really inspiring episode, and we talk about how Ica got into the creative industry, how he started, funded, and is now running his own podcast, which has over 100 episodes. He also talks about the great work he is doing with We Are Here Scotland, which is a platform that he founded during the pandemic that aims to amplify the voices of Black and people of colour, artists and creatives across Scotland in the creative industries. Ica is one of these very inspiring people who gives way more than he takes from the world, and so I'd really encourage you to enjoy today's episode. So hey everyone, and welcome to Just a Chat With. I'm your host, Andrew Dobie. Today I'm very excited as we're here with none other than the amazing Ica Headlam, a creative and podcast host based here in the northeast of Scotland. In late 2017, Ica started to independently produce and host the Create podcast, which is a weekly show that explores creativity and arts in the northeast of Scotland, with the aim of drawing a wider focus to Aberdeen's creative community. To date, it's been commissioned for the Look Again Festival, Northlands Creative, and the City Moves Festival Dance Live. The podcast has also been downloaded over 26,000 times and is about to hit 100 episodes. And I know how much work goes into a podcast. So, Ica, congratulations on hitting number 100. You'll have learned a lot. Ica is also the founder of We Are Here Scotland, a platform that aims to amplify the voices of Black and people of colour artists, and creatives across Scotland's creative industries. Ica is also a qualified social worker who works with vulnerable young adults across the city and is a strong advocate for representation across the arts and values the importance of an open and honest dialogue. Hailing from the southeast of London, is it east? I've got it right this time. Yeah. Southeast of London, Ica moved to Scotland in 2004 and now lives in Aberdeen with his wife and 2.5-year-old daughter, Izzy. Hello, Izzy, if you're listening. Ica, thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you.
Likewise, though. Thank you, Andrew, for having me. Yeah, really looking forward to kind of catching up with you today.
Yeah, no, thanks for joining us. And by the power of remote working and the technology, we've been able to do this without having to travel too far out of our homes. Are you in your studio today? Where are you?
No, I'm at my home. Yeah, actually, yeah. Like I say, new home because we moved here back in March, and yeah, it's still kind of getting used to we haven't put our stamp quite on the new home in terms of actually painting and decorating and stuff. So still even when we come home, pick up our daughter from nursery, she still says new home. So still getting used to being in this space as well. So yeah, no.
You've kind of got to get used to a space before you start to change it, haven't you? You don't want to rush into that.
Yeah, definitely. So still getting used to that. But no, just at home today, and this obviously just kind of pleased to obviously connect and speak with yourself.
Oh, great. And so how's 2021 been treating you so far? Obviously, a house move is a bold move in the middle of a pandemic, so congratulations.
Yeah, no, cheers. Yeah, no, it's been a bit of kind of full on. Temporarily moved out of our old house, moved in with the mother-in-law, which was all good. I actually get on with my mother-in-law, and then it's kind of busy at work, and obviously with We Are Here Scotland. more or less like behind the scenes in terms of the podcast front. We do more actually kind of podcast kind of like support and like consultation with people and stuff like that. So that's kind of been a really kind of interesting kind of turn of like events for 2021. But also like, we just
is that helping people kind of start up in the podcast?
Yeah. It's kind of just giving people some kind of guidance and guidelines, because I think for me myself in terms of podcast front, that's kind of been a bit of like self-taught kind of stuff, and also kind of getting some support along the way as well with that. And it's been really interesting kind of like 2021 so far. And obviously just recently, earlier this month, we launched the We Are Here Scotland kind of Creators Fund as well. I'm sure we'll touch on that as well, during our chat. But it's been all good, man.
Yeah, so you've kind of, from reading your intro, you have a lot going on in your world, and I also read or on one of the podcasts heard that you had COVID early on in the pandemic as well. Do you mind talking us through that? How that kind of affected things for you?
Yeah. It's kind of like one of my friends from work, he kind of jokes about this, like, and I see the joke about it as well. He said like, I got the raw, unfiltered COVID last year because my wife, she's an advanced nurse practitioner, and she used to work at one of these hospitals in Aberdeen, and this is literally after 3 weeks of her like maternity leave, she went back to work. She caught COVID, and I caught it. I think, definitely think our daughter had it, but thankfully it didn't impact on her health as much as it did on ours. And the first week, you kind of feel like you would ride it out. It's a bit like the flu. It did feel like the flu. The second week was, like I say before in my podcast, and I've spoken about this, it was a game changer. And I had to go to the A&E after kind of like a online consultation with NHS24. The doctor was like, right, I need to get you straight to the hospital. And it was a difficult and challenging time, because when I got to hospital, they said I was dehydrated, even though I was drinking loads of water and stuff. I had like beginnings of sepsis, and they called it, I had like pneumonia, but back then on my lungs, they called it COVID pneumonia. So I was in hospital for like 5 days. I probably went home a bit earlier. They're kind of saying to me they wanted to keep me in for a few more days, but I was just desperate to kind of get home. This is like actually in early May, like last year. Struggled with long COVID, it's just been like a bit of a, like I say, like a game changer in terms of actually like health. And actually being so close to being really unwell, not seeing like, and not really kind of, and being quite uncertain, because it was at the height of the time as well when a lot of Black and people of colour were going into hospital with COVID and weren't coming out. So a lot of my family in London were actually just really panicked, like, oh my God, you're going to make it through. It was touch and go, I think, when I first got to hospital, but a few days when I was there, it was actually like, they were there. I've got to kind of give a massive shout out to the people. It was like Ward 207 at Aberdeen Royal Infirmary. They were just amazing. They really looked after me. They, without their support, I don't think I was able to kind of not be able to kind of get home. So I'm always thankful to them. And it's been an interesting experience, and obviously the long-term kind of health kind of like impact that's had as well. So I always say it's been interesting, but it has been an interesting kind of time.
Yeah, that's been a rough ride for you. And do you think it's given you a kind of, obviously having a young family, your daughter, kind of under 3, does that giving you a kind of new perspective on, how you're looking at life now and kind of where you're putting your focus and effort?
Oh yeah, because I remember like just before, like I know like everyone knew like at the kind of higher lockdown, everyone put on a bit of lockdown pounds as well. So I remember like that was me. And
I'm still shedding mine still.
Yeah. I remember like my mother-in-law kind of said, "Oh yeah, you putting on more beef." This is before I got really unwell, and then obviously I came out of hospital and I was just like lost a lot of weight, and I'm being lucky to kind of keep it off and actually be more active, because you do have that kind of like perspective. I remember like my wife said to me, it's like when I went up from the ambulance, like my daughter, who was just about 1 and a bit then, was waving like bye, and that could have been like I might have not even come back home from that kind of thing. So you kind of think like, right, got to take care of myself. You got to think a bit more about like how you go about doing things as well, and also kind of like being like, right, I'm kind of overworking myself here, let me just chill out and stuff like that. And it's kind of putting a little bit more things into perspective and how you kind of live in your life as well, man.
Yeah, no, and I think it's interesting. I always like asking people how it's affected, or because I think it's affected everyone's kind of little circle differently, hasn't it? And kind of and it's being mindful of everyone's kind of impact, in different ways. I'm interested to know, because I was kind of also, as I was reading your intro, I forgot to mention in there, you also have a clothing brand, right? So I'm a big believer, if you want something done, ask someone busy, right? So you seem a busy person. Tell us a little bit about your clothing brand.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole like the big up the Dean thing. It's kind of like it came from a bit of like obviously when I started my podcast, I was thinking like, oh, how am I gonna kind of fund my efforts if I want like new equipment? I've always been interested in kind of like clothing and kind of doing a bit of like a little kind of small kind of merch thing, and yeah, I just kind of did that and like launched that. I think it was like early 2018, and then did a few kind of like Etsy pop up events and stuff and like that. It's kind of just kind of grown more like on an online kind of platform like on Instagram that I kind of just share a lot, and you see, like everything in there as well is also kind of working with like local businesses as well. It's kind of where it comes from importance about behind the whole thing, like big up the Dean, as in like the Dean shortened for Aberdeen, and big up is this kind of like, from my kind of cultural background, my family being from Jamaica, we always just say like, yeah, big up yourself and stuff like that. So it's kind of like a bit of like, she say, yeah, take pride in obviously what's happening within our city. So that, hence big up the Dean kind of like title. So yeah, no, it's been really good fun. And like this year, me and my friend, Gary Kemp from Dork Skateboards are doing like a collab pop-up event later in the year. Probably shouldn't have said that, but like I think we've got sort of a few things kind of confirmed, so really kind of looking forward to kind of doing that as well. And yeah, it's been a really kind of exciting kind of thing, having small little kind of business and helping. That kind of helps like lots of different things in terms of actually supporting other local businesses, but also kind of actually drawing that kind of interest back into what's happening within the northeast of Scotland as well.
Yeah, and are so all the products other people's products, or are you working and collaborating with artists and different brands?
Yeah, I've done some collaborations. Yeah, I've done a couple of collaborations over the years, a couple of artists, and also the collaborations that I've done have been actually a couple of people that have been on the podcast as well. So it's been really kind of cool, a bit of a little kind of synergy, kind of like full circle kind of thing. So it kind of really worked out kind of well. So always kind of actually like interested in doing kind of like collaborations, but it's always kind of like can't do it as regularly as I would like to, because of just obviously doing a full-time job like social work, being a parent, being a husband, all these other responsibilities. So like I'm really happy to obviously do this collaboration with my really good friend Gary this year, because like I really like his kind of work ethic as well, and he's all about kind of bringing that positive vibes back into like the northeast of Scotland as well. So yeah,
they're a cool brand. They're a cool brand. You need to intro me to him when you get a chance.
Yeah, most definitely, man.
Yeah, so as well as all these creative outlets, you clearly are a creative at heart. But you work as a social worker, and I'm interested. How first of all did you get into social work? But also, do you think that there's a kind of balance, or the creativity brings something positive to the work that you do? I can imagine it does, right? I can imagine. If you had a social worker, someone working with you, a real creative person is going to add real value. I'd just love to hear from your perspective how the two of them blend together.
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely like, I think it kind of blends really well, the kind of creative side, and also kind of being like that kind of community aspect of working with like vulnerable members of like, the public, especially vulnerable young adults. Like I've always kind of used my own kind of like, even though I didn't qualify, graduate in art and design when I was in London, always kind of brought that to working with young people who struggle to communicate, so doing like life story work and stuff like that, kind of working in a way that benefits the young person, not just the kind of structure, the system of, the council social work. Like I always find that kind of challenging for young people. If you sit across from them with a bit of paper and like, tell me your life story, there's creative ways you can get young people to express themselves, and so I've always kind of taken that tact, and just like through my work just recently, through like Peacock Visual Arts, they're based in Aberdeen, and they had funding to do some community work, and I said, hey, come do some stuff with our young people, where I work. And that's worked out really well, that they've got more funding now from the lottery, and they're saying, hey, we're just dedicating that time and space and money to work with the young people, who like me and my team work with, we're doing like these kind of art sessions every Thursday. And we're lucky we're based at work. We've got a lot of like grounds, a lot of like, there's like tables and grass outside and stuff like that. And a lot of the young people kind of benefit from that as well. Because even though we're a city-based office, where we are based is kind of like, you seem like you're not actually really in Aberdeen, even though you're not that far from the city centre. So that space as well, and the people that have worked with us, it's just kind of worked really well. And it's also kind of like that interconnection. I was thinking like that kind of creativity. So it kind of opens up to also like your colleagues who, you know, who not necessarily feel like they're creative or not involved in the creative industries themselves, to be like, oh, that's really beneficial to that vulnerable young person. That young person really is actually getting a lot out of this. Or what else can we do and stuff? So that actually kind of get everyone kind of really geared up and excited about like new things, new opportunities that can happen and stuff. So I think it's always like, for me, it's always works and it always kind of meets well. And it's all about, it's kind of about that kind of, also that brings it back to that kind of community kind of aspect as well.
Yeah.
You know, that's one of kind of the biggest kind of drives for me. So it's also like allowing young people to recognize, oh, there's other possibilities for a career, or like, you know, there's other interesting things, because a lot of the young people we work with in their kind of communities, and I'm probably from one of those communities where I'm from, like you feel like you're in a bubble.
Yeah.
And until you go out of like, you know, into central London, you'd be like, oh, things are completely different from like my own surroundings. So it's also about that kind of exposure. How can you expose young people to interesting things and give them like a viable option in terms of actually work or career, or like, you know, if they want to go and study something, you know. So that's what's kind of been like my kind of mindset, saying like, you know, not always just on the creative kind of like side of things, but just exposing young people to new and interesting and challenging, like, you know, interest.
Yeah, but I think that's so inspiring, because it's like, I think I love what you said about, you know, you're helping them creatively understand what their story is. And I think there's something so powerful, and, you know, in that, in terms of, I think, you know, sometimes you can feel you don't have worth, or you don't have, you know, everyone's trying to be like other people. And when you can give people the confidence that, well, you're your own unique selling point, aren't you? And the kind of authentic you is actually, if you can amplify that, you know, and I can see that's clearly what's shining through in your work. And you're able to do that with all the creative people that you're meeting as well, and help with that inspiration. I mean, you know, I was kind of reading about you, and, you know, I learned that you'd grown up and you studied art and design. Can you tell us a little bit about that, and kind of how you ended up going from kind of art and design and kind of changing tact? Or
I always kind of tell people this. When I was in London, I went to like City of Westminster College in Paddington Green and studied art and design. But at the age and stage where I went there, I was a bit unruly. I came with my mentality from, like I said before, the bubble where I grew up, being like, oh, this person, this teacher, this lecturer can't speak to me like this, then that. And so then it was just kind of like, you know, I did like a year of that, dropped out, and then kind of just thought, right, I'm just going to go and work and just have fun and stuff like that. And I remember like I was working in Sainsbury's, in Balham, and my friend who's volunteering in King's Cross saying, oh, let's come and join me. Because the Holy Cross Centre in King's Cross, I don't know if they're still there, but it works with like vulnerable like adults, a lot of like substance misuse and like, you know, mental health issues. And thought, I give that a try. Then I end up being there for like a year, working there for a short period. And then I kind of just moved to Aberdeen, and I thought like, right, don't want to really work in retail. I don't really feel like there's giving me any kind of drive or purpose or making me happy. Why? I'll give social work a go. I actually like helping people, working with people and stuff like that. So yeah, just kind of like did a couple of years at college at HNC level, then just went to like Robert Gordon's University in Aberdeen and just did like my BA honours like in social work, and graduated in 2011. So it's always kind of been like, you know, for me, it's kind of like been like that kind of natural kind of transition as well. And I think kind of happened at the right time for me as well, to kind of start volunteering when I was in like my 20s, and then actually going to university in my 20s. I think if I was younger, I wouldn't have any of that focus. I'd have been like just out every night on the freshest week and all that kind of stuff. And, you know, but it's just kind of like, yeah, for me, I think like things has happened post-progress, like at that kind of natural kind of stage for me. When I was younger, going to college to study art and design, I just wasn't mature or ready, I think, looking back, to actually kind of follow that through and complete that kind of course.
And were you kind of nurtured in creativity at home, or, you know, was your whole family creative, or
Yeah, creative in definitely different ways. Like I've kind of mentioned this before, like in different conversations, like, you know, like my older brother Gavin, like he would go and like, you know, cut people's hair like in our garage and stuff like that. And like he was really, really good at art himself, and he's something that he never kind of like followed through. Remember, like my mum, really good kind of singer, but also within that kind of Caribbean culture, my mum would be the one that would be like, right, you know, she'd be organizing. Like it'd be like these kind of times. I don't know if you like saw Small Acts by Steve McQueen. The
No, I've not.
series. You should give it a watch. But the kind of like there's one the episode Lovers Rock kind of gave me like a nostalgic kind of like flashback to like family kind of cookouts and stuff like that. My mum used to be the person that would organize the aunties and the cousins and everyone. Right, you're doing this and you're doing that. So taking leadership, and then everyone had their kind of speciality. My mum had her kind of speciality when she cooked as well. So I've always seen actually people around me, family members, it's kind of like even though they had jobs, but also doing different things as well.
Yeah.
Not just within the arts, but always kind of actually like some people say like, oh, like a side hustle or stuff, but also having their own small little business or something like that. You know, just kind of multitasking, never kind of just actually being content with what they had, always doing something kind of different as well. But yeah, like my mum also took us to like, you know, Dulwich like art gallery in the summer holidays because single kind of parent like, you know, household, like mum couldn't afford to kind of give us everything that we kind of wanted. So that was the kind of thing I really do look back and appreciate my mum exposing us to that. So we go around the gallery, then we go for a picnic and stuff like that. And there's different life experiences as well. I think I'm very kind of thankful for that. I wasn't just always contained in the kind of bubble of South East London. On the estate, it was just like, oh, let's just go to Brighton for the day. Let's just go to like Margate and stuff like that. You know, just lots of different experiences. I think definitely helps me, you know, in my child and also kind of actually me kind of pursuing what I'm doing now in terms of actually like all the kind of things I'm doing.
Yeah, I think it definitely helps. The older I've got, the more I realize, the more I appreciate and visit and speak to people in different cultures and see different cultures. It definitely gives you a much more rounded perspective on life, doesn't it?
Yeah, most definitely, man.
Yeah. So your Creative Me podcast, right?
Yeah.
You've I think you started it. I'm going to look for my note here. I think you started in 2017. Or is that right? 2017?
Yeah.
And you've got to 100 episodes. Now, I think I probably started mine probably similar time. I'm not sure. Maybe a little slightly later, but 100 episodes is quite an effort, isn't it? Tell us where you started and how have you got to the number so quickly?
Well, again, it's just like, you know, it's going back, it kind of links to kind of like my job a bit. I remember like one of my former like colleagues, when I was newly qualified, sent me an email and it was actually from the creative learning team. We were based in Aberdeen, like Aberdeen City Council funded organization. And they were doing workshops, but they were offering workshops within like, for everyone across the council to be involved in like, you know, creative, like little one-off creative workshops. I'm thinking actually, Lynn, who emailed me, said, oh, this would be right up your street because she always knew that I was passionate about art and kind of creativity. And I remember like signing up to that and just kind of getting a really good relationship with like the creative learning team in Aberdeen. And then they had like little workshops, like called Slack, Sustaining Life as a Creative, that I signed up to in like, it was like 2016. I still kind of think now, I don't know how I wrangled it, that I managed to make that a part of my work day. It must have been like, I didn't have a lot of cases then, but my work was like, oh yeah, I did a lot of creative things in my work in my building as well with young people. So my manager was like, oh yeah, go for it. So just from that, I kind of met really interesting kind of like artists and creators. And I kind of felt like then like, hey, like I love podcasts, but no one's kind of documenting all this kind of really interesting talent that I'm seeing in the northeast of Scotland, and kind of felt like, right, let me apply for like local kind of creative funding in Aberdeen, and you know, for like how I'm gonna like do a podcast, and pitched it, got like half of the money that I asked for, and just kind of did a bit of research, which I probably, looking back now, should have done more research on in terms of actually equipment and stuff. Like,
just to stop for 1 second, because I suppose if anyone listening and they heard, you know, how do we get funding? How do I start a podcast? Because I'm keen. I think you've got two great perspectives here, Ica, that you're obviously now teaching people the learnings you've had from the podcast, but you've also been through how do you fund it if you've got no cash, right? Can you get a little bit of an insight on that and how that works for people?
Yeah, I mean, like for me, it was like back then, it was like Aberdeen City Council's creative funding application process. They used to do it twice a year. I think they did it this once this year, but it's just kind of like, you know, you like fill out the application, you have to do a lot of research as well and have that more evidence-based kind of like application kind of form. Like price breakdown and stuff, what you're spending the money for, what is this activity for and stuff, how's it going to benefit the local kind of community as well. So I did that. That's probably one of the kind of first kind of applications I applied for in terms of actually funding. But those are the things as well. I think like for people who are looking to kind of get involved in like funding something like a podcast or anything kind of similar, that first look for local funding. I know people do go for like Creative Scotland, but also look for local funding and what opportunities are there as well. I thought that was kind of like, I didn't really know about that local fund opportunity to someone from, you know, Creative Aberdeen, like, you know, Creative Learning told me about that. So yeah, that's when I kind of applied for that in like 2017. But like I'll say to people, be prepared because it's quite a long process because it goes through panel stages as well.
Sure.
Where people be like, you know, you might progress to some stage, but you might not get the funding approved in the second stage. So and recently I've been a part of actually the kind of panel selection process for different kind of things in Aberdeen. So you kind of recognize that, oh yeah, it's not a simple thing. These things take a long time, you know, a full day of people going through applications. So yeah, for me, I think that was the kind of route like I took, just kind of looked at local funding, what was available. But I guess as well, like for me as well, like the whole podcast thing was actually kind of a lot of like self-talk as well. And if you go back and listen to like any of my first kind of episodes, I actually cringe because it's essentially like the kind of the sound level just been like, God, this is really bad. You know, like having someone not even close, like having to outside the room with a mic, you know, it's just like, oh yeah. So it's just like, you know, you learn as well very kind of like quickly about, okay, this is like the right kind of room for acoustics and stuff like that. Also, like, you know, I have like someone like called Jake Lawson locally. He got involved in kind of doing the editing stuff for me. I think he probably took pity on me and being like, yeah, I can help you out of this. You know, he just kind of graduated from the local college and kind of met him like a few years ago. And like, he's just kind of involved now in terms of actually like, look, you know, all the editing, sound check kind of stuff. And that really is like, it's taking up the podcast and probably the listens up another level.
Yeah, no, you almost need an army, don't you, to kind of build a podcast? There's just a lot to do. You kind of almost like, oh, you just turn up and record. But
no, it's a hard graft, man.
there's definitely a hard graft. Is there anything you've learned specifically that anyone looking to start a podcast right now that you think, if I can go back to episode number 1 and tell Ica right now, what's the biggest takeaway for you or the biggest learning?
I think the biggest learning thing is actually saying like, you know, do your research and stuff like that, man, and also kind of like find like especially the decent right kind of equipment for recording. Explore all your avenues in terms of actually equipment and stuff that you can also bring your price range, what you can afford, and also kind of like like tap someone for advice if you think like there's someone online you follow and be like, hey, like don't be worried or scared to be like, oh, they're not going to reply to me, or if they say, hey, I can't, sorry, I'm busy, they've replied. But you know, you can also try and find those avenues where someone can maybe kind of help you out on the technical side of things, because I think that's one of my kind of thoughts that I just kind of rolled with it out of pure kind of excitement that, oh yeah, I'm doing this now and stuff, and you know, and stepping out of my comfort zone as well was kind of a big element for me. But I'll say like looking, if I had a chance to kind of go back and have a conversation with me in 2017, it would be like, yeah, don't be afraid to actually just ask for advice. Do some test runs and stuff. Don't just kind of run straight into it. Get some practice runs in there as well. And then like, and allow yourself, give yourself a break. Because there was one time before my daughter was born, I was just constantly like podcast, you know, like that's what I was just doing, this recording. But as time goes by and you get more busy with different things, it turns into like an episode every couple of months and stuff like that. So just kind of pace yourself as much as possible as well.
Yeah, no, I think that's really valuable advice, Ica. I think, you know, I think you can often try and bite off too much, can't you, when you start these things? And I think it's trying to find that balance and that flow. You know, we often pressure ourselves. We've got to get it out in the month, and then you think, I don't think anyone's thinking, where's that episode? You know, it appears when it appears, and I think, you know, you need to let these things kind of flow. I mean, do you still get nervous now? Do you feel?
I do, you know, because I know this before we kind of record a chat, I was saying, oh, I'm doing some kind of conversations like tomorrow, and like it's just like you still like, you know, when you're doing your research, I'm thinking like, right, you know, you still get that bit of being like, can I still do this and stuff? You do get that kind of bit of actually nervous kind of energy, I think. And I think that's still a good thing to have. I think if I wasn't nervous beforehand, I probably should stop doing it. But it's just kind of like, I kind of treat like doing my kind of podcast like this, like, you know, an informal kind of conversations, kind of keep it light and put people at ease. And I think that's kind of like, for me, that always kind of works. That also puts me at ease as well. I don't want to put pressure on myself or people, because like you can build it up in your head what it's going to be if you listen to podcasts regularly. And I think for me, I allow there to be mistakes, but also like edit when there needs to kind of edit, and like yeah, it's just kind of like just kind of trying to be more chilled with myself and with the whole process.
Yeah, well, if you're a very easy person to talk to, I feel very relaxed in your company,
Nice one.
so
Yeah.
I think that helps anyway, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're also the founder of We Are Here Scotland, which is launched at the start of 2020. Can you tell us a little bit about that, where that started, your motivation for that?
Yeah, I mean, like We Are Here Scotland, kind of started more or less. I think I kind of started that on like the kind of podcast front on like Instagram and like Create Me Podcast kind of feed. This kind of like actually knowing, obviously, like for me, I come from a place where it's very kind of multicultural. From London, I'm used to actually seeing a lot of more representation of people that look like me. But in the northeast of Scotland, like I'll go to like, especially on the creative kind of front, I go to a lot of kind of events or like social gatherings. And I didn't see anything that represented me on the wall space or in terms of actually people who organize these events. I mean, all good relationships there, but I felt like I want to kind of connect with people that look like me. I want to have conversations, especially within the kind of creative and artistic community in Scotland. And because like, I think in Scotland, there's also, it's kind of like actually like 3 degrees of separation anyway. So over the years, you start kind of like following people of color, or actually just other people, just within the creative industry, you get wind or hearing, or you see someone share something, you think, oh, check them out, and you follow. So by then on the podcast front, I started kind of like following quite a few people within the kind of Black and POC community. And I felt like with like We're Here Scotland, I wanted to kind of create more kind of unification, more of like joined up kind of thinking in terms of actually what we can do to support each other within this kind of really interesting, diverse and creative kind of community.
Yeah.
It felt like everything was a bit more kind of like, disjointed, and like people were like still connecting to each other, but everyone's just kind of just doing their thing, everyone's just getting on with what they need to do. And obviously on the back end of last year, with the whole like, the George Floyd thing and like lots of like Breonna Taylor and lots of other kind of issues that I think my kind of like frustrations was even more evident. You'd probably look back on the We Are Here Scotland feed, because I was kind of like, acknowledging what's happening in the US, but also being like, hey guys, this has been happening in the UK for a very long time as well. The hurt and the anger, is pre-existing, it's multi-generational. And there is that, within a lot of kind of different structures, not just kind of within creative industries, it's like there has to be some kind of like change. So the base of like We Are like Here Scotland is that kind of, how can we do something kind of positive out of all this kind of our frustrations and the tragedies? How can we actually lift each other up, specifically within the kind of creative industries? Because as you know, like, the creative industry, it's a hard thing it's a difficult thing to kind of navigate. It can be quite insular, it can be a bit kind of insidious sometimes as well. And it's about like who and that allows some people to get opportunities, and then some other people don't get opportunities. But so for We're Here Scotland kind of finds actually, how can we make things a bit more level kind of playing field, a bit more like actually make sense to people in the Black and POC community?
Yeah, no, I think it's so inspiring. I get to see, what you're doing and how much you've achieved with it. I totally agree, and I think there's a huge problem of representation, and I think it's quite easy to kind of almost bury your head in the sand and say, well, no one applies for jobs, right? And maybe naively, in the past, I've just run a company and you've not thought. And I think what's been great for me, especially over the last 2 years, is that having these conversations, I've realised as a white person running a creative business and, in one of Scotland's biggest city, that we have a part to play to look at what unconscious bias we have, how we recruit, how we talk, what we use our platforms for, and, trying to change some of the behaviour so that it's fair for everyone. Because, I mean, I even found it as a white male, I think getting into the creative industry hard enough, right? And so I can only imagine, when you don't have a voice in the creative industry and you're not seeing other people like you, how hard that's going to be. So I suppose what are some of the things that people can do to help to support the cause? I'm quite keen to talk about your fund that you've just created, but I want to open this up to anything, and to discuss what kind of things and how we can support you.
I mean, for me, I think one of the important things, especially like conversations I have with people privately, across Scotland, is actually for, and I say like the more kind of like established, like, white institutions, organizations to actually listen when people are actually voicing their frustrations. It's not a personal attack on the individual per se, but it's actually saying, I'd look at like this, Andrew, like if somebody was venting their frustrations at me about something I run or organize or something, I'd want to actually listen to them and be like, right, let's have an adult conversation. Because I think a lot of the things that kind of happen, and a lot of people say like they speak of a lot of organizations and they're like, yeah, we're here to listen. And then when they can't start speaking their truth or their lived experience, everyone kind of clams up and be like, oh, that's making me feel really awkward. I don't want to speak about this. That's why I will say like, I appreciate that kind of like, the open and honest kind of dialogue, like, and you have to kind of get, before you get comfortable, you have to get uncomfortable as well. We have to have these kind of conversations about why is there a lack of representation? Why aren't we're seeing more people of color in positions of, of power and actually, and making decisions? Why do we always have that? It's always like a process. It's like a slow marching process. So actually, like, representation, things are changing, but it's always kind of being governed by this drip feed kind of process. So how can we kind of move that along in the right and kind of correct way, not just as a tick box exercise? Someone say, oh yeah, I've done my part, I'm absolved from any kind of responsibility now. So that's kind of like my kind of thing. I think actually there needs to be more of an open and honest conversation, but also when people are speaking, especially people of color within the kind of creative industries, like they deserve to be listened to. It's not like an attack on the predominantly white-led organizations. It's like, no, just listen. Like, we're not coming for your jobs or anything. We just want to, it's not even actually saying we want to like a seat at the table. We're creating our own tables already, but we just want to be seen, respected as equally as, as yourselves. So.
Yeah, no, and I think that's so valid. And I've always been a big believer that, the best creativity comes from diversity of thought and diversity of perspective. And, I think, sometimes when you start a business or, from my experience anyway, you can very much, first of all, look for, better grow a team. You look for someone like you and start to, but very much I've learned over my sort of kind of growing as a leader, I suppose, very much you need to grow a team of polar opposites in every shape, size, and form. In terms of, you need diversity of age, background, economic background, and that mixing pot of people from different perspectives create the best and best ideas. So I'm very passionate about trying to help make a positive change. I came across you via your the creative fund, the creators fund. I'm keen to. I know you've there's a lot of that on your social channels at the moment, so I'm keen to kind of give you the space to kind of let people know how they could be involved. But also, what I love about your creative fund, and this is why I was asking earlier on about grants and how to get money. I think it's often very, very difficult to get money, isn't it, to start something off. And what I love about your creators fund, and I'm hopefully not taking away from what you're about to say, is that you've made it. You're trying to make it as easy as possible. For people to access money.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the Creators Fund kind of started on, like, as we spoke about briefly, when I kind of started doing the podcast and I applied for local funding. Okay, like I got some of the funding, but I had no kind of mentoring or kind of advice afterwards. Actually, how do I navigate doing this thing that I need to do? No one kind of checked in with me, be like, "Hey, how are you getting on with that thing you said you was going to do?" So I think actually a big element of like the Creators Fund was to kind of create something that was accessible to artists and creators in the community, but also a bit of follow through. Hence why there's kind of actually we're looking for mentors as well to kind of note their interest just now to mentor the potential awardees of the fund. So we've reached our target. It's through that's for GoFundMe. We launched that last year in November, and then we've got our target probably back in June. And I definitely kind of want to say I appreciate everyone contributing to the fund, because the pandemic was such an uncertain time of actually in terms of people employment and losing work or not being in regular work. But, when you kind of start a GoFundMe campaign, you see people that contribute to the fund and actually had a lot of friends and family back home who financially, I know, could not afford to contribute money, but they still did because they believed in obviously the campaign. I really appreciate them and everyone else that's contributed to the GoFundMe Creators Fund. And a big part of element of it is actually saying, right, because I know like the conversation I had with people in terms of funding, the main kind of big kind of funders that fund creative opportunities, a lot of people in the community kind of feel like, do you know what, there's too many like, hurdles to jump over to get this kind of certain amount of money. That some people kind of start it and then think, I'm not going to meet that deadline. I'm just going to leave it. So I think like our application form is like all on the website, and people have got until like the 31st of October to kind of complete that. So we're looking to award about 6 or 7 people this year. Then another like 6 next year, going into next year as well. So we're kind of doing it in 2 halves, I think, as well, like £500 each. And yeah, we could definitely encourage people, everyone in the community, like musicians, visual artists, photographers, like videographers, graphic designers, like everyone within the creative and artistic kind of community to actually apply, especially, obviously specifically for Black and people of color within the creative industries. So yeah, it's been really positive, getting a lot of kind of positive feedback, a lot of like retweets and reshares on social media, which I always kind of definitely appreciate. And I think like, this is the kind of thing why you kind of like also set up a creators fund, that you want to actually inspire other people and also like younger generation of people in the community to actually find a means of a way to kind of fund what's important to them. I think like if that's that's one of the most important things for me about the creators fund, that beyond what we do as We Are Here Scotland as a community interest organization, that at least hopefully that it inspires other people from the community to just find ways to kind of work with each other to be like, hey, yeah, we can, we want to create our own studio space, and all right, let's start a GoFundMe campaign, or let's just do this and let's kind of do that. Because I think one thing I've seen as well, that like, especially last year through the pandemic, how resourceful we can be as human beings, across the whole board in terms of actually, all right, we can get something happening. Oh yeah, let's just actually do it. Because I think before, there's always kind of been this kind of, especially in the creative industry, it's almost like kind of waiting for that permission to kind of do something. Somebody wants to, oh, yeah, you go first, you do that, you take that risk first before I do that. So I kind of feel like, like we're kind of actually just being like, right, trying to create something that's kind of long lasting, but also inspires our generations. And the Creators Fund is just kind of like the start of it. And, kind of like watch this space, I guess, in terms of actually the future. Like,
yeah, well, that's what I was going to ask. What's next? Is there ways that people can support? Are you looking for partners? Are you looking for more mentors? Or
yeah, definitely looking for like more notes of interest for people to be mentors. Like all the links for that are on like the link in the bio. Like if you go to our like website, well, go to like Instagram, you'll find a link in like the bio of our website. It's weareherescotland.com. Find all the information there as well. But yeah, like we're definitely open to working with people like from the community and organizations, because this is that's very kind of important to us to work with people, and we and we're not kind of doing that kind of segregational kind of thing. We're open to working with like many different walks of life as well. I think that's the way we move things kind of forward. We can't just kind of just be here just in our corners doing our own thing. There has to be obviously more kind of like joined up thinking in terms of like the kind of creative industry, and a bit more kind of radical kind of thinking as well. I think it's definitely needed. I think actually within the kind of creative industry, it can be that kind of like old school kind of corporate kind of thinking. No one's kind of thinks really outside of the box. But I'm seeing a lot of that kind of happening a lot now, especially in the northeast of Scotland, which I'm very kind of proud to be a part of. And definitely seeing that more or less like, where you guys are as well, like, Scotland. I think like Scotland as a whole is never kind of seen, I feel like, or validated in comparison to the rest of like, the UK. Does that make sense?
Until now.
Yeah, until now, yeah. It's always kind of felt like that, we're always kind of like, not getting that kind of recognition. But I see there's a lot kind of definitely changing.
Yeah, no, I think you're obviously a great leader, doing a great part of putting us on the map. So thank you for that. I'm hugely inspired by it all. I suppose, do you have any advice for any kind of younger creatives who are listening, who kind of, I suppose, maybe wanting to get into the creative industries, not knowing how to get into the creative industries, not knowing how to approach, the whole thing? Is there any great advice that you could give?
I think, I would say to definitely like any like younger people is like, find, connect with like-minded people, connect with like, people that, you want to create and do things with. And like I said before, like, yeah, just start doing stuff, just start creating stuff. So, like, if depending on what your interests are, if you're wanting to film music videos, start doing stuff with your friends, start contacting organizations or agencies and saying, hey, I'd like to kind of volunteer. Where can I, I'll turn up. And there's that kind of element of actually, yeah, sometimes you might have to go and just kind of like, work for free and volunteer, but get as much exposure as you can as well.
Yeah.
I think that's so important. I think for me, like, again, if I could go back and speak to myself, like, yeah, just contact that person and stuff like that. Like, just make yourself be seen and known that, oh, I'm hungry and I want to actually help out. I want to actually learn. I think that actually kind of goes a long way, especially right in the creative industries. I think, yeah, like, people definitely just have to kind of actually, it's almost like you have to get out your comfort zone as well. I know it's like not everyone's going to be like, oh, I'm going to message this, that person. But yes, if you're kind of hungry, you're passionate about what you're doing, a big element of that actually is stepping out your comfort zone and contacting people. Also recognizing that there are people who've been in your shoes at the same point as well, being like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to do this, but they've found ways to kind of navigate that as well.
Yeah. Oh, great. And well, I feel like we should give a shout out to the creatives from Aberdeen today as well.
Yeah, most definitely.
I think there's, for me, being down in Glasgow, there's a huge beacon of creativity shining from Aberdeen, and I see it. And you're obviously playing a big part in that and helping elevate so many creatives up there. And I think the New Art Festival, is that 3 years old, 4 years old?
I think it's 4 years old. Yeah, even like my friend John Reed, he's got like he's been in this kind of game of bigging up stuff in the northeast of Scotland way longer than me, for like 11, 12 years. He's got a blog called Mood of Collapse, and like he's one of the first people I actually met and said, hey, like a mutual friend put us in touch with each other. And I actually met him just after he finished. He does like the New Art tours around Aberdeen and stuff, members of the public. So I think I first met him in like mid 2017. Just had like a long chat with him for like an hour and a half, and just like speaking about like our love for the northeast of Scotland, but also kind of our passion for like art and kind of creativity. So yeah, big shout outs to him, like, everything that he does as well.
Yeah, I think I kind of, every time I see it on social media and I see all this amazing street art from it, and I'm like, I've missed it again, or I've missed, and I've never managed to get there. So if you know the people who create it, I would love to chat to them, get involved somehow as well, because it does look like it's I think Aberdeen's been one of these cities that's really embraced street art, and I think it's, what I love about it as well, they brought people from all over the planet, and the beautiful artists creating amazing things. And where was I recently? Well, it's not recently because the pandemic has lasted for years. But I was in Denver, Colorado, and they've got an amazing street art scene over there as well, and I love it. I love just when artists come and and it creates a great buzz, and I think it's so good for a city as well, and it's clearly working for Aberdeen, because I see so many great creatives coming out of Aberdeen. My creative director at Made Brave is an Aberdonian as well, so cool. So he'll be delighted that Aberdeen is also is a big focus for us. So
nice one.
No, well, Ica, I would love to chat all day, but I'm conscious you have a podcast to run, you have work to do, you have a family, etc. I just want to thank you so much. I've been inspired. Reading about you. I've been inspired reading your creative journey and everything that you're doing. Thanks, I think I kind of looked at you and looked at your profile and everything, and I went, this person gives back so much, and really in that way has inspired me to think, what am I doing and where am I putting some of my positive energy as well. So I just want to thank you for everything you're doing for the creative industry, and specifically the creative industry in Scotland. So thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to chat, and thanks to everyone for listening. We'll see you next time.
Cheers.